I went 25-3 in MUTMAS Draft on my way to 5 flawless runs to get my choice of Tony Pollard or Joey Porter Jr., which are currently going for about 1.7 million coins at the time of this recording, and I can show you 5 repeatable steps that I did to get you there as well. Hey y'all, this is Gamer Pat, and as I mentioned, I have 5 repeatable tips that I'm going to share with you to help you get your flawless runs needed to get your 1.5 to 2 million coins that you so rightly deserve. The first tip is going to be player selection. Now it's going to be really important here on which players you choose. It's going to make or break your entire run. The philosophy in player selection is going to be stacking the offensive and defensive skill position players with speed, because you only get a handful of those star players, and you're going to want to create those mismatches against the average Joes that are going to be in all of the rest of the spots. So here we're going to completely ignore the offensive line, and as much as we can help it, we're going to ignore the defensive line as well. And we're going to want to stack up playmakers at wide receiver and tight end on offense. Now, running back is nice if you have the opportunity to do so, but really we want to focus on getting at least 3 pass catchers that are going to be the focal point of your offense. For your quarterback position, you're also going to want to prioritize speed. Your best bets are going to be Lamar Jackson, or if you can handle a lefty, Michael Vick is going to be the fastest player in this mode at 99 speed. And if you can't have either of those, as in this option for me, I had Jaden Daniels as my fastest player, I want to go ahead and select him, because you can pick these other players, but having a mismatch at speed at quarterback position is also going to put a lot of stress on the defense that doesn't have great players minus a handful of positions. On defense, we're going to want to focus on the cornerback and safety position first, and then the linebacker position as a secondary. And once again, we're going to leave the defensive line completely alone. You're really going to want to prioritize getting at least 2 good corners, and then a mixture of 3 at least safeties or linebacker hybrids. You want at least 2 safeties, 3 if possible, or if it's 2 safeties and 1 linebacker, that's fine as well, because ultimately you want that versatility where you can move your players around in secondary, and the linebackers are a little bit more limited. They have to be in the box, where the safeties can play in the box or back or at corner. So that versatility is going to be very important as you play. It's all going to be about speed in this game, because as I mentioned before, most of your spots are going to be held by people who are pretty slow, who aren't going to be able to effectively play against those star players. So it's going to be all about creating mismatches on the offense against their defense, and then preventing the big play on defense with their offense. Now that you have your all-star receiving core and secondary picked out, it's time to move on to tip number 2 for the first time you see the field, and that's going to be substitutions and matchups. Substitutions and matchups are going to be the most important thing to get set up in game, so you can prevent the big plays on defense and get the big plays on offense. Now on offense, it's going to be really important to make sure that you have all of your receivers, who are your star players, set up on the field. Sometimes if you pick multiple tight ends or multiple receivers, you want to make sure to have formations that include all of them on the field, or substitute them in if you're in a formation that doesn't naturally include them. The idea once you pick your plays is you're going to want to identify their defensive formation, see where their star players are at, and try and line your star players up on their average Joe players. You want to try and avoid their star players if at all possible, and create those mismatches. While the offensive side is going to be focusing on generating those explosive plays, the defensive side again is going to be focused on preventing the big play. So in your substitutions, the reason we picked all those cornerbacks and safeties is you're going to want to make sure that your 2 safety positions are going to be star players, whether you have to substitute corners in if you don't have enough safeties, or putting your natural safeties there as well. And then on the boundaries, on the corners, you don't have to have star players. You can have your star corner in the slot. You can have them on one side of the outside, or if you have 2 star corners and the safeties, you can have those out there as well. And then I like to run a nickel on defense. So I like to have either that safety linebacker combo or 2 safeties in the box, because especially if the player that I'm playing against has a fast quarterback, I want to have somebody to spy. The important thing is to have this naturally set up for you, but then be paying attention as the game goes on to see what the opponent's tendencies are going to be, where they're hurting you, and you can make adjustments from there. But it's going to be a really good place to start to have those initial substitutions in place. For example, if you see that they have Tom Brady at quarterback or something like that, then maybe you don't need 2 fast safeties in the box. You can move that guy around somewhere else to cover a receiver. Either way, that's going to be fine. Also, you want to go ahead and set your matchups to cornerback matchup by speed. That way, your fast corners are going to move around to match their fast receivers, and it makes it a little bit harder for them to get the matchup advantage on you. I also like to play in base defense, so my defense doesn't move around too much based on what they're doing. I like to base a line and just have it set the same way every single time that I go out there. Now that you have your substitutions and matchups ready to go, that leads directly into tip number 3 on offense, which is shot plays. Here, it's going to be a fast-paced game. There are only 2-minute quarters. You want to score quickly. You want to score as much as possible. And the way that we're going to do that is by taking advantage of those matchups that we set up with the shot plays. As I mentioned before, if you have a star player such as Vernon Davis with 98 speed, and you see that they have a cornerback and a safety out there who have no stars under them, you can just basically put him on a streak and he's going to outrun everybody, and you can just bomb right over the top, lob, he'll run underneath it, and it is an easy touchdown. You can do this with basically any position. You can do it with motion plays. You can do it with running backs out of the backfield if you have that as well. But just really important to identify where their weaknesses are and then make sure that you are taking shots on those players who are not going to be able to keep up with your players. As you can see on this play, I have a running back in the backfield who is a star player, and I've identified that this corner and the safety on this side are not star players. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring the running back on a wheel route up the sideline, and he's going to get right behind them perfectly for a touchdown. That's exactly what I'm talking about here and the kind of matchups and shot plays that you want to be setting up. Now that you've been bombing them for touchdown after touchdown when you're on offense, on the flip side, that leads into tip number 4, which is protect deep. Now, your opponent may be trying to do the same thing that you are, and that is why we have our safeties back, and that is why we have our people covering in the middle of the field as well. The main thing is you want to score quickly and you want to make them take their time, nickel and dime you down the field, and hopefully not score at all or have to settle for a field goal. And they can get frustrated and try and go for those shots while you are set up. The way that I like to do this is I like to do a cover 4 zone play. So I prefer the 3-3 odd if the playbook has it, because this cover 4 zone drop is a zone play. It's not a match play, which means your deep safeties will actually play deep. If you do like cover 4 quarters, or if you do cover 4 palm, then your safeties will play match coverage, so your opponent can actually manipulate them and take deep shots while your safeties will pull up when they're not supposed to, do that kind of thing. So I always like to do the cover 4 zone drop, if at all possible. You can see whether it's a zone or a match play in the bottom corner of the play. It will indicate that, but the cover 4 zone is actually going to prevent a lot of those deep passes. Now, another way that I had mentioned that an opponent can get big chunk plays is if they have a speedster like Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick at quarterback. And that's why it's important that we have in those scenarios a box safety or fast linebacker who we can put on a quarterback spy, so he can follow him around the field and he won't be able to tear you up on those plays. And again, as the game declares itself, as it goes, if they're not scrambling as much, then you can put that player into coverage, or you can blitz them to create more pressure. But I tend to start my drives just kind of getting a feel for what the opponent does and really playing on the defensive side, hoping that they don't get a big one-shot play, just to kind of see the kind of game that they want to play. Now, despite doing all 4 of those first tips, you can still find yourself in a game where you're falling behind. It's been a struggle. You're playing against a competent opponent, and it comes down to an onside kick. My tip number 5 is how to effectively onside kick. Now, it's going to be hard to do it 100% of the time. Obviously, onside kicks are a little bit more of a low percentage play, but there is a way that you can increase that percentage, maybe to about like a quarter of the time, a third of the time, and recover those kicks. And I'm going to show you how to do that. As you see here, I'm in practice mode. We have the setup for an onside kick. Now what you want to do is you want to do a normal onside kick, and you want to not move your direction at all. You want to leave it where it's at. And whenever you start the kick, you want to stop the meter at the top somewhere around the 100% line. Can go a little bit over, a little bit under, right on it, but right in that range. And then as it comes back down, you don't want to stop it at all. You want to get the worst accuracy possible and then just let it fly. As you can see here, if done properly, the ball will bounce over, make it difficult for the defender to grab, and it can bounce off their hands right into your hands. I actually did this in my 5th game of my 5th flawless run. I was down by 2 touchdowns with a minute left, and I actually successfully got 2 onside kicks and scored 3 touchdowns in that last minute to win the game and get my Tony Pollard. As you can see, it doesn't work every single time. Sometimes the ball bounces a funny way, but it is the most effective way that I've found to do an onside kick to give yourself the best chance at recovery. And those are my 5 tips to win MUTMAS Draft and get your 5 flawless runs to get your Joey Porter Jr. or Tony Pollard card. And I promise you, if you follow these steps, you will give yourself a much better chance to win and win consistently. Ultimately, it is still going to come down to your skill. However, this is going to put you in the best position to succeed. And I wish you the best. Good luck. Go get your coins. This is Gamer Pat, and I will see you next time. Please like and subscribe if you like this content.